It's controversial. Nothing is cut and dried, and when you read things that are published in magazines or newspapers by some breathless journalist who's writing a story, trying to excite you about something, you can pretty well figure out that he probably doesn't have it right.
Well, because a lot of it's just what it is. It's for the shock value.
It's not. Journalism,
it's nothing more than that. It's how much. Well, unfortunately, in states especially, shock value sells.
How many times have you read an article, the universe is going to end in the big crunch, and then the next day you read an article, expert says the universe will expand forever. Well, which one of these experts is right?
Yeah,
That's the kind of controversy that goes on in science.
Well, they're probably both right. We'll probably expand forever, and then one day we'll probably implode on ourselves. They're probably both right. They just haven't figured it out yet. And since I've learned a long time ago, nothing's wasted in the universe. Everything is recycled. So even if we implode, we'll just start over again.
Exactly.
So I've never seen what, and for me, in some science, I have to wonder, because there's some things that I have to wonder about. Like, 2 decades ago, we were all talking about water on Mars. Of course, science said no, no, no. Of course, now we know that's wrong.
Yeah.
That there is. And, we've all been saying there's life on Mars in some sort, form, or fashion. Finally, they're admitting that, yeah, there probably is some type of life on Mars. So it just seems like the mainstream science is always 20 or 30 years behind the visionaries. And it's a shame, because you would think by now they would have learned. The science would learn. Well, a lot of our technologies are based from sci-fi, from science fiction.
Oh, yeah, and much of science today, mainstream science, is no longer true science.
Oh, no. Today it's about the buck.
It's a religion.
Yeah, it's the religion of science, and how much money can I make, and how much fame can I get.
Yeah, and what gets funded is generally what is popular, and very often you have to understand that science is the tool of governments to control the masses of humanity.
And
therefore, they don't want, science to be free and to reveal all of their secrets. They want to control it. So what gets funded is what they approve, and what doesn't get funded, is what doesn't get done.
Well, I just came back a couple weeks ago. I was at a meeting at Tulane University amongst a group of physicists, and I asked them point blank, how come we don't have any scientists that are in it for the love of science and not in it for the grants or the loans or the fame or the money? And of course, a lot of them got offended, but several of them got up there and addressed the question. Well, it's not what it used to be. You have to do something popular to get a grant or a loan. Schools won't fund you unless it's something that is popular and mainstream, or something that society's interested in. And so there's not a lot of true science anymore in the fact that, let me have $1 million so I can go find out why a particular thing works. He said, we just don't see that kind of science anymore.
No.
He said, now...
It's very, very bad for humanity.
It is. And it's going to hurt us in the long run, because there's no true science. And I don't want to offend, because I know there's a lot of scientists listening to my show. I said, I don't want to offend anyone, because I know a lot of y'all are out there doing hardcore research, but, from the ones I've had on the show, I know a lot of them are not doing what their heart wants to do.
Exactly. And they need to be doing what is in their heart to do, what drives them, because that's where the true creativity is, and creativity is the primary moving force of the universe, and it manifests through people and through science.
Yeah, it's just a strange little beast we live in today. But, I did hear a Nobel laureate the other day talking about how peaceful the planet is and how nice the planet is. Well, he's making a point, and he was actually very correct, and he's going to win another award for this. If you take it based on where we are today, based on where we were 50 years ago, or even 100 or 1,000, we're much more peaceful. There are less people dying of starvation or war than ever before on the planet, especially considering there's 6 billion of us today. And he's got a very good point. He said he doesn't understand why humanity is always waiting for the other shoe to drop. He said instead of taking advantage of the most plentiful, most peaceful time the planet's ever existed, most people are sitting at their home whining, crying, moaning, and waiting for the other shoe to drop. He had a good point, and it's a tough one to get around. So he made a joke about this, which was probably in poor taste, but he made a joke, well, maybe the extraterrestrials will come and wake us up or help us to understand that we're better off than we realize. I just thought
I'd like to see his statistics.
Yeah. Well, no, it was already looked over by a large group of people. And it is a true fact. There is less people starving today than even just 10 years ago. And there's no major wars going on the planet at all. None. There's no World War IIs or no Roman empires or British empires or French empires conquering the world. There's none of that going on. You've got a couple little brush skirmishes, and that's about it. And So I understood.
You call Iraq a brush skirmish?
Oh, yeah. I call it 53
people?
million dead in World War II, 4,000 dead in Iraq. Yeah, I call it a brush skirmish. It's a big difference. It's not a war. All of our citizens aren't involved in it. We don't have literally millions of troops deployed. To me, that's a war. When we deploy all of our forces and we've got all of our branches out and going, that's a war. What we're doing right now is the same thing we did in Vietnam. We're babysitting and trying to correct someone else's problems. Because let's be honest about it. If the United States wanted to, they could end Iraq, Afghanistan, and Pakistan in one swift blow without even putting any troops on the ground.
Whose problems are we trying to correct?
Not ours.
Well, I mean, we created this problem.
Oh, I agree we created the problem. I won't even argue with you there. I agree that we've created several problems on the planet.
Like the pharmaceutical industry, they create diseases and then they sell you the cure.
Oh, yeah, I heard our emperor the other day said that he's going to give us, at least make some of the more needed medicines free in the United States. I'm like, yeah, well, I'll wait for hell to freeze over, and then maybe we'll see that. I mean, don't get me wrong. I mean, if he does it, it would be great. I just don't think it's going to happen.
Well, I don't think just get a universal health care plan, then they don't have to make the medicines free.
That's true. But you see, they don't even want to talk about that.
But they can sell them for $1.
Yeah, they don't want to talk about giving everybody in the States. I guess, you know what it is? Well, I don't think they want us to live that long. I think they're already worried that there's too many of us and we can't afford what we have in the country as it is.
Well, there is too many of us, but I don't think their solution is the right one.
I
think education is the right one.
And I don't think going around killing people for the sake of killing people is going to help anything, because basically that's what we're doing in Iraq. I mean, there's no real threat to us over there, or in Afghanistan. There might have been, but there's not now. And frankly,
well, they've got oil.
Yeah, they got oil, and we need to keep our oil supply running. And
it could be a trigger for a world war.
Yeah, well, the Bible says that's where the Third World War starts, is in, well, they didn't call it the Third World War, but that's where they say Armageddon starts, is in the Middle East. And it's a good chance now that Iran's, launching missiles over there right now, so we might see something. But, see, I worry when we have presidents like Obama in office, because he's kind of wishy-washy, and he's not a very strong president, so you tend to see more stuff flare up around the world when the United States has weak presidents in office, like when Jimmy Carter was in office.
I don't think there's been a truly freely elected president since John Kennedy.
Oh, actually, they say since Truman Roosevelt. They say he was the president that was elected by the people for the people.
That's probably true.
Yeah, because Kennedy was a give-in, and I think they realized when they did that, just like they did with Obama, they made a mistake. But sometimes
I don't know. Obama's playing their game.
He is now. They, matter of fact, Richard Dolan a couple weeks ago was on my show, and he called him Bush Light. And by the way, I love that term.
Oh, he's absolutely right. I agree 100%.
Yeah, I love that term. I've been using it ever since. I had to tell Rich Staines because it's a good term. And
but you know what? He may turn out to be worse than Bush.
He might. You might be right. There's some stuff that he's doing right now that, it was bad because day before yesterday, he was on talking about Guantanamo Bay and releasing the prisoners in the United States. Of course, Congress shot that down. They told him he was losing his mind. But what was really bad is he did this hour and 20-minute lecture, tried to run it over so the networks wouldn't pick up Cheney. Cheney came on, did a beautiful lecture, made Obama look like a total idiot, and has gone up 15 points in the polls because of this. He was at 26, now he's at like 42. And it hurt Obama bad. He sounded like a spoiled kid that couldn't get his way. That's what Obama sounded like. And, I don't know what we're going to do. We haven't had a president like this since Carter. I mean, he thinks because he's the president, everything should be his way. I guess he don't understand what bipartisanship is. But it's like John Podesta, when he was talking about, the U.S. should release its documents, and Stephen Bassett's telling me about, Obama's going to be the one that gets the information out. I had to tell him, I said, I don't think he can. I don't think he has the strength or the backing to make this disclose anything to the general population. I know in Europe they've been talking a lot and they've been releasing a lot of information, but nothing of any consequence, nothing that's changing anything. France put out some information a few years ago. England put out some. A couple other countries did. And I said this 10 years ago. I said it doesn't matter what countries put out data until the President of the United States or the President of the UN steps up and says extraterrestrials are real, it's not going to matter. then they're not going to believe anybody else. They're just not. Nobody else has the credibility.
Well, I mean, look at all that has come out from very respectable sources and how those sources were then defamed, blamed, destroyed.
Tore down to nothing. Yeah, that's typical.
You know, so it's.
So what made you brave enough to get out and decide to get into this alternative world, as I like to call it?
Well, it kind of snuck up on me because I keep telling people that of all the people who never wanted to know anything about UFOs or so-called aliens, I deserve a place at the head of the line, and that's true. This is not something I ever wanted to know anything about or ever cared about, or I spent most of my life dabbling in the paranormal.
Yeah.
Metaphysics, studying, reading, working as a hypnotherapist, and
well, unfortunately, in the States especially, shock value sells.
how many times have you read an article, the universe is going to end in the big crunch, and then the next day you read an article, expert says the universe will expand forever. Well, which one of these experts is right?
Yeah,
That's the kind of controversy that goes on in science.
Well, they're probably both right. We'll probably expand forever, and then one day we'll probably implode on ourselves. They're probably both right. They just haven't figured it out yet. And since
religion,
it's the religion of science, and how much money can I make it? How much fame can I get?
Yeah, and what gets funded is generally what is popular, and very often you have to understand that science is the tool of governments to control the masses of humanity. And therefore, they don't want, science to be free and to reveal all of their secrets. They want to control it. So what gets funded is what they approve. And
we have some type of life on Mars. So it just seems like the mainstream science is always 20 or 30 years behind the visionaries. And it's a shame, because you would think by now they would have learned. The science would learn. Well, a lot of our technologies are based from sci-fi, from science fiction.
Oh, yeah, and much of science today, mainstream science, is no longer true science.
Oh, no. Today it's about I've learned a long time ago, nothing's wasted in the universe. Everything is recycled. So even if we implode, we'll just start over again.
Exactly.
So I've never seen what, and for me, in some science, I have to wonder, because there's some things that I have to wonder about. Like, 2 decades ago, we were all talking about water on Mars. Of course, science said no, no, no. Of course, now we know that's wrong.
Yeah.
That there is. And, we've all been saying there's life on Mars in some sort, form, or fashion. Finally, they're admitting that, yeah, they're probably...
It's controversial. Nothing is cut and dried, and when you read things that are published in magazines or newspapers by some breathless journalist who's writing a story, trying to excite you about something, you can pretty well figure out that he probably doesn't have it right.
Well, because a lot of it's just what it is. It's for the shock value. It's
journalism,
it's nothing more than that. It's how much can